should see a countdown too. Hello and welcome to A Mighty Blaze. My name is Trisha Blanchette. I normally host the Mighty Blaze podcast because I prefer to be off camera. But today I am thrilled to be on camera with the amazing Stephanie Burns, the author of This Little Beauty, Far from the A-list. She is not far from the A-list, though. She is our A-list today, for sure. Welcome, Stephanie. Welcome. So happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Trisha. And as far as I'm concerned, you are at the top of the A-list too. So I'm so excited to be here with you.
Thank you. I have a very short intro bio thing, and then we'll get right down to business, just so everybody knows who you are. Stephanie Burns is an author, a Beagle mom, and a marketing professional with an MFA in creative writing from Emerson College. She's drawn to stories about people making mistakes and finding their way, even when the world has other ideas. As the proud COO and director of social media for the award-winning Tall Poppy Writers, she is dedicated to lifting fellow writers and getting unforgettable books into the hands of smart readers. She lives on the South Shore of Massachusetts, where she plots by the ocean with her almost famous beagle, Ollie Twist. And in case you're wondering, you can follow Ollie Twist the Beagle on Instagram. He has almost 2,000 followers.
Yes.
He's adorable. So I recommend everybody check that out. Okay, I am so happy to talk about Far from the A-list today. I found it riveting. It was so fascinating. And for anyone who likes Hollywood stories, child star stories, kind of sad Hollywood, interesting backstory stuff, it's really fascinating. The book was witty and fun and fascinating right from the jump. Our main character is Michaela, who is a former child star, all grown up, and now she's floundering in the wake of her disappearing fame. Like, who is she now? What does she become? She's got a vain baseball star boyfriend, a vain rock star ex-boyfriend, and I felt like a fly on the wall just watching all her various disasters unfold. Michaela, can you tell us a little bit about the story and what readers can expect?
Absolutely. Well, you did such a perfect job already. As you said, a lot of vain people in her life. So she is a former child star who is now trying to find her way in the world. I like to say that it's a coming of age story for someone who never got a chance to come of age. She's seen as the precocious little 7-year-old she played on America's favorite sitcom, or she's seen as the 20-something that splashed all over the tabloids. And she's trying to discover who she is in a world where everyone is telling her, this is who you are. So after a bit of a fall from grace in the court of public opinion, she set forth on a quest for self-discovery that includes, as you mentioned, the vain ex-boyfriend, the vain current boyfriend, a vain stage mother, the support of her best friend, Josh, who's a former boy bander and a little too complacent in how far his star has faded. And it's, like I said, a coming of age story. And it's set in 2007 during the height of tabloid toxicity, when young women were just really sabotaged on a daily basis for existing and living their lives. And the paparazzi just followed them everywhere. And so not a great time to be a famous female for sure.
Yeah, I remember poor Britney Spears and the shaving of the head and all that stuff. That was really sad to watch. What made you want to write about fame and famous people?
Well, I just love pop culture, all things pop culture. So I love TV and music and movies. And it's just, ever since I was a little kid, I've just always consumed all of it, you know, from the time I wake up until the time I go to bed. But that writer brain in me is always thinking, well, what's the real story? What's the real story we don't see behind the headlines, or what we don't see behind the red carpet? And so I just started thinking about that. And I was thinking about child stars in particular, and how we so often see two paths. We see the ones who successfully transition into being A-listers, like Natalie Portman, where, you know, all of a sudden they're an Oscar-winning actress. And then we see the ones who are filled with tragedy and just have terrible stories about what happened to them. Then I just wondered, what about the ones in the middle? What about the ones who we don't necessarily know what they're doing with their lives, or we do through blogs, tabloids, whatever. But what is it like to try to be a normal person who is living your life, and the whole world won't let you be your own person because they're just thinking of you as this one thing that you never asked to be?
Yeah, I often wonder, everybody wants to be famous, but I wonder once you get there, if it's definitely not a great thing.
Yeah.
It just seems like, you can't even run and get a gallon of milk without.
Right. Exactly. There's so much baggage. Like when I go down to get a gallon of milk, like I'm not thinking about like, oh, I need to put my makeup on and I need to make sure my hair is dry and I don't have my sweats on. Like I'm like, oh yeah, I need milk. And I just get in the car and I go. And so there must just be so much baggage that comes with it. And like you said, so many of us think about being famous and how cool it would be to be famous and, get into all of the exclusive parties. But when you think about all that it comes with, would we really, really want that? I wouldn't. I'd take the money, but I wouldn't like all the baggage that comes with it.
And child stardom is something else altogether, right? It's one thing if a 25-year-old decides they want to be famous, or a 40-year-old, but child stardom is a whole other issue to me. Mm-hmm. And I was fascinated from the start because we meet Michaela when she's a bit older, and she's just so adrift is the only word that I can think of. She had it all, but so early in her life, the fame, the money, the respect, all the things that most of us work toward our whole life. She got it very, very young. And now what? And she's still a young woman, but it's like, it's just such a strange place to be. When we meet her, she's only 27 and she's having a midlife crisis essentially at 27. I was turning the pages really quickly because I just couldn't figure out where she was going to go from here and what was going to happen next. And the characters that come in and out of her life are just fascinating. And I'm wondering, do you connect with any part of Michaela's story? Do you see yourself in that, or is it pure like alter ego fantasy creation?
It's funny because at the surface, it seems like I would have no connection to her because she is, getting paid to party at New York's hottest clubs and she's going out every night until 2 a.m. and just getting paid to have her picture taken. And, she's dating the hottest guy in baseball and she has, this great penthouse apartment and she's just like the queen of the social scene is what the tabloids call her. And I am like in my matching pajamas with my dog by 6 p.m. like eat dinner and then watch Jeopardy. And so like you would think that we wouldn't have a lot in common on the surface. But I think that, and we've lived in each other's brains now for so long, like me writing her narrative and her just being in my brain all the time. There are so many things that I think all of us, no matter if we're famous, no matter, what our circumstances in life, we do go through times where we're thinking like, what's my purpose? What am I doing? What would have happened if I had done this different thing 5 years ago? Would I be where I am? And so I think that those feelings are very common for all of us to kind of question our purpose in life and our role in life and where we're going. Yeah. So all of those aspects of her, I definitely, connected to. And I would love her wardrobe. I mean, if she would share it, really great. But yeah, I love her so much. She just holds such a special place in my heart. She's a little bit broken. And like you said, it's like she's going through a midlife crisis in her 20s. She says something in the first chapter about how her life has been in high speed reverse since she was 7 years old. And, how do you live like that? It's just asks a lot of questions that I certainly never stopped thinking about while I was writing the book and even now.
Yeah, one you do so well at the poignant moments of it. And one moment that was particularly poignant to me in the book was her own birthday party. She showed up to her own birthday party, which was very glamorous, of course. And I'm going to read a quote here. It said, "Everyone was too caught up in their drinking and dancing to notice that I had arrived." And she just says this very matter-of-factly. And I'm thinking, it's your birthday party. And no one even cares that you're not there. Like no one even looked around for her.
Mhm.
And she plays this off with her trademark bravado, as she has just
Mhm.
learned to do so well. But you're such a skilled writer that her pain really shows through anyway, and what you tell us and don't tell us. And we know that she is seeing what her life has been reduced to. And it's kind of one of those all is lost moments, or
Mhm.
a moment where you look around and go, what the heck have I been doing? Like, where am I? What is going on? And you just played that scene so well.
Well, thank you.
She seems stuck between childhood and adulthood in a very weird way. And I think that seems to happen to so many child stars. We read about their stories time and time again. I'm wondering, do you think that child stars have any hope of a normal adulthood, or are they just doomed by what was done to them as children?
That's such a good question. I mean, I like to think the Pollyanna in me, the optimist in me, thinks that everybody has a chance. Everybody has a chance for a second act, and we all have things in our lives that we need to overcome. Most of us, it's not child stardom, but we all have things in our lives. And so I do like to believe that there is a chance for a normal life, but I do think that they start out with a lot stacked up against them, and a lot of barriers to get that normal life. But hopefully, it is possible. I think that you do see the child, it's like you haven't heard from this person in years, and then you look it up and it's like, oh, they bought a farm in Nebraska or something. So I'm sure that there are cases of former child stars that are living their normal lives, and I hope, for their sake, that they are.
And some end up just continuing to act. I can think of a handful that just kept going and enjoyed it. And Jason Bateman jumps to mind. He's doing amazingly, and we used to watch him when he was a little kid. So
Silver spoons.
Just never know. Can you talk for a moment about the men in her life? The three men in particular that we meet, and they're very different. And I'm just fascinated by how you arrived at those particular character studies, so to speak.
Yes. So the men in her life are very different from one another, and they do play such a big role in her life. So one of the things that I was trying to convey in the book is the way that we see ourselves versus how the world sees us. And in Michaela's case, it is how the world sees her as this former child star or this headline, but it's also how she's seen in the relationships that she's in. So when we first meet her, she is dating the hottest guy in baseball, Burke the Colonel Sanders. And everybody, if they don't ask her about Briarstown, her sitcom, they're asking her about what's it like dating the Colonel, and like, what's he really like? And no spoilers here. She'll say it right in the first couple of pages that she hasn't actually seen him in person in weeks. And so, that relationship was a lot of fun to write, for sure. And then there's Deacon, who's her ex. He's a rock star, and she was his muse, and she believes that he's the only person who ever loved her for who she is. And he broke her heart anyway, and so that makes her feel wounded in a way of like, here's this one person who saw me and loved me, and then he got rid of me, but then all of a sudden he's back in the picture, and dealing with an identity crisis of his own, and she's fitting into that mold of what he needs from her there. And we have, actually, there's two more guys I wanted to mention. So there's Ben, who's a normal, nice person.
I love Ben.
I know, we all love Ben. Ben's so great. And so it's a totally new world for her to have this normal human being who's like an English teacher and not, in that world. And we have Josh, who is a favorite of so many people who have read the book early. He is her best friend. He's a former boy bander. They dated when they were 16 and, have been broken up for 10 years. He was like her childhood sweetheart, but he has been her best friend all that time, her only support system at those points in her life. And as I said before, dealing with fame in a much more healthy way than she is, or his former fame in a much more healthy way than she is, which makes her feel in some ways like, what's wrong with me? Where Josh can walk down the street and not care that people are calling him, and it bothers me. And so all of those relationships form how she sees herself, for sure, and also how she moves along in her journey. And so I loved exploring all of those characters. I just, the good ones, the narcissists, all of them, like I just could spend with all of them because they were so much fun to write.
I was definitely rooting for one in particular, but we will, no spoilers here, so that's all I'll say. And I didn't always agree with Michaela's choices, which was frustrating, but that's how you know it's a good book, because you're like, oh, you get so involved with all the different characters.
There were so many times writing the book where, she became this fully formed person as I started writing the book and as I got to know her. So there were so many times where I would try to steer her toward a certain decision because this is where the plot needs to go. And she was not letting me. It was like, no, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. And then I finally listened to her and I was like, oh, okay, you were right.
Sometimes they do a mind of their own, unfortunately. Okay, those are the men. So now I want to talk about the women. First of all, we'll get to the momager, of course.
Yeah.
But there was Cece, right? Her name's Cece?
Yeah, Cece.
Okay. So what I noticed was that she had a lot of male relationships with men and not a lot of relationships with women. And the one that she did have was not good with Cece. So I was wondering if that was purposeful on your part. I know we do see, like, even with the Taylor Swifts and all it's like the cat stuff and the fighting, and everybody's always trying to pit them against each other. And like, I'm wondering why that seems to happen. And if you were trying to speak about that a little bit in this book.
Yeah, I definitely was. And a part of it too is Michaela has a hard time trusting everyone. So everyone in her life, except for Josh, she has a very, very hard time trusting. And I think that the women in particular, the only real relationship that she had throughout her life was with her mother, who is a narcissist and basically thought of Michaela as a genetic lottery ticket and used her as a tool her whole life. And so when that's the one female relationship that you have in your life, what does that do to you? And how does that impact the way that you see other women? And she doesn't know who her father is. And so that was a huge hole in her life, her entire life. And so I think that has affected her relationship with men. All of those things, I think, come together in making her who she is. And it just was, again, it was really fun to explore the trauma of poor Michaela. But I think that all of the pieces of her life absolutely have impacted how she's formed these relationships and why she has a hard time trusting people. And Cece is kind of her friend du jour. And so we get the sense that she's had this revolving door of a female friend. And she says in the first chapter that she's sort of between a friend and an employee because, Michaela goes to these clubs and Cece gets a cut of her appearance fee if she sets it up for her. And so it's, again, just like in her childhood, it's like all of these people are profiting off of her. And how is she able to trust anyone and think that anything is real when that is how she's treated?
Yeah, not well. The role of stage mom is big in this story. When we meet Caroline, the mom, we figure out that she has clearly used her daughter as a substitute for her own ambitions, and it is very hard to watch and probably pretty common. Did you do a lot of research into stage moms while writing? And do you have any stories to share about what you learned?
I did. And again, just when I started writing the story, it was like, of course she has a stage mom who's controlling her whole life. And then Caroline kind of built from there. Ever since even years and years before I started writing this book, ever since I was young, I've always been fascinated by, as I said, pop culture. And so I was reading biographies on Natalie Wood and Elizabeth Taylor and all of these Hollywood stars who were child stars. And so I think all of that was sort of already percolating in my brain. And then as I was writing the book, continued to read a lot about child stars of today. But one story in particular that does stick out to me that I actually reference in the book because it's such a horrendous detail. I read a biography of Natalie Wood once where they say that her mother tore the wings off of a live butterfly right in front of her in order to teach Natalie how to realistically cry on screen. So she tore the wings off of this butterfly and sent her daughter off in front of the camera to cry. Who knows if it's true or not? It was in the biography, but that story it absolutely stuck with me because that's just, I mean, how horrible is that? Like for a child, I mean, how horrible is that for anybody to witness? But a child and your mother is the one that's doing that to you so that you'll cry on screen and hopefully get, an award for it. Like it's really like mind-boggling to most of us.
Yeah. Isn't Natalie Wood the one that also died a mysterious death?
Yes, she drowned. Yes.
Oh, that's right. And it was like she went missing off a boat or something.
Off of a boat, yes. Yeah. She was with her husband, Robert Wagner, and Christopher Walken, and the three of them were on a boat and she drowned in the middle of the night. So a lot of mystery around that to this day.
What thing? My gosh.
Oh my God, I know. Exactly. Very, very tragic. And I just loved her movies growing up. I mean, I loved Splendor in the Grass and West Side Story and all of her old movies. Rebel Without a Cause. Like I loved those classic movies that she was in. And so I read biographies on her as a teenager and was horrified by everything that she endured.
And she's someone who just kept going. She just kept acting and right into adulthood. So maybe she didn't have much of a choice. Who knows?
Right.
I hope you don't mind my saying this because I consider it a huge compliment, but this book kept reminding me of Daisy Jones and the Six.
I love that. That's a great compliment.
Okay. Not just because of the subject matter of fame and fortune, but also because of the vibe. It was very non-formulaic. So many books these days, you pick it up, you sort of know what you're going to get. And that just wasn't the case here. It felt truly original in a way that I don't see very often these days. And I think it straddled a very interesting line between genre/ popular fiction and literary fiction. It was sort of in between for me, which was really something to pull off. Was that intentional or did that just happen? Were you trying for that? Or
I wasn't really, but I love that you said that. Like it makes me so, so happy because it's music to my ears. I just wrote the kind of book that I wanted to write and wanted to read. Everybody always says, write what you know, but really it's write what you like to read, because if you're not enjoying what you're writing, nobody else is going to enjoy what you're writing. And so I think that's like the best advice that you can give any aspiring writer. And so I was just writing a book that would have been interesting to me in the style that I only know how to write. I've tried, when I was in writing workshops, when I was in college, trying to write in a different way because that's how my classmates were writing, and feeling like I would write stories just for class because I was a little afraid to share the kinds of stories that I wanted to tell because they were a little different from what other people were writing. And so when I was an undergrad, I would do that in my writing workshops. But then when I went for my MFA, I just decided, this is my life. You only get one shot at it. And this experience is teaching me who I am as a writer. And so I'm going to write the kind of writing that I want to do and the kind of writing that I like to read. And that's when actually people started responding to my writing. Fancy that. It was like when I put my heart into it and shared the kind of writing I wanted to do, that's when people really, I think the authenticity, I guess, came through. And there were a lot of conversations when I've been in various workshops throughout my life where people would say like, well, I don't understand. Is this like, at the time it was chick lit or it was, women's fiction or whatever. And people, is this or is it literary? Like, what are you? And I was like, it's just a book. I don't know. And so, but I take it as such a compliment to hear you say all of that, because to me, it's just the style that I write and the story that I want to write and how it all came about. And I'm just very, very grateful and lucky that I found an agent who liked it and then a publisher who liked it. And so all of that just was a lifelong dream. So,
and it's difficult in this industry because the agents and the editors, they want to know, where is it going to sit on a shelf? What do I call it? And so often writers get rejected. A good story gets rejected just because it doesn't have a clear label, which to me is a little crazy, but I understand the marketing piece of it. And there are only a certain number of shelves at Barnes & Noble, and they have to know where to put it. But it's just frustrating because you don't feel free to just write the story you want to write.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And, you know, when I was querying, you know, I queried this book off and on for years, and then I'd stop querying, and then I'd rewrite it, and then I'd query again. But years ago, two things stick in my mind that go exactly in line with what we were talking about. One of them was years ago, and this was before Daisy Jones and the Six and Evelyn Hugo. Somebody said to me, "Oh, I love your book. I love your writing, but books about celebrities aren't selling. Do you have anything else?" And I was like, no, like I don't have another finished book, which I'm sure at the time that was, you know, true. I'm sure at the time that type of story wasn't what was hot. But I took that as, you know, gospel essentially. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's it. And then I put it aside for years. And then all of a sudden people wanted to read about celebrities, which is great because it opened the door for the rest of us. And then another thing was I had an agent who loved my book, loved my writing, but wanted it to be more in the romance vein. So a lot of her suggestions of things that she wanted to have happen in the book showed me that she considered it more going into that direction, which, you know, I love romance. I love reading romance, but that's not what this book is. And that's not what the story I was trying to tell was. And so, and, you know, when we're trying to get published and we're, you know, all of our hopes are on someone saying yes, there were times when like, well, should I just take those suggestions? Should I just do this? And then she could be my agent and then see what happens. But I didn't, because it just wasn't the book that I wanted to write and the story that I wanted to tell. And so I'm glad that all these years later, I stuck to my guns, and here it is.
It's not easy to stick to your guns, though, you know, when you work so many years towards something and you're like, all right, I'll just change it to what you want it to be. But I'm so glad you didn't, because the end result is fabulous.
Thank you.
All right. So anyone who follows you on Instagram, and if you don't already follow her on Instagram, or Ollie Twist the Beagle, please do that.
Follow us both.
Knows that you are a huge fan of the aughts pop culture. So is that why you decided to set it there, or were there other reasons why you set it in that particular time period?
Yes, both. So I do love that time period. It was such a pivotal moment for me, I think, in my life of being essentially the age that Michaela is in this book at that time was just such a fascinating time. So I do have a lot of nostalgia for that time and definitely had interest in it. But the choice to set it during that time was absolutely intentional because it was such a unique time in our pop culture history. So if you think about it, it was before social media. So there were no Instagram channels for all of these celebrities, but blogs had taken off. So there were all of these celebrity blogs, and the iPhone had been invented that year. And so people had this really great camera in their pocket and access to the internet in their pocket in a way that they hadn't before. And so it was just sort of before things shifted. Because, you know, we were starting to see where things were going to go, but we hadn't quite gotten there yet. And so these blogs and these tabloids just had free reign, essentially, to write whatever they wanted about all of these celebrities.
Nasty stuff, a lot.
Nasty stuff, like drawing on their faces with Microsoft Paint and posting it. And like, and as a society, like we consumed it. Like we would go online in the morning and see like, oh, what did these people do last night? And so it was just such a unique time in not a lot of great ways. And like I said, social media hadn't yet taken off. There was like Facebook if you had a college email address, but that was it. And so You know, they didn't have the means to go on an Instagram live and be like, hey guys, here I am cooking in my kitchen. I'm just a normal girl. So we were only seeing what was being fed to us on the blogs or on the tabloids. I remember there was that picture, it was 2006 actually, so a year before this book came out, but where Paris Hilton, Lindsay Lohan, and Britney Spears came out of a club together and got in the car, and it was like the biggest thing to happen that year was the three of them getting in a car together. And it was like, oh my God, they're friends. They knew each other. And like two of them had been feuding and then they were together. And it was such a big deal. And the headlines, though, like we look at that picture now and we're like, oh, they were so iconic. And they were. But the headlines at the time were atrocious. And they weren't doing anything. They were three girls sitting in a car. So definitely, it seemed like the only time that I could set this book. And someone like Michaela, it's just the perfect storm of, you know, when you're already feeling lost and you're already feeling like, I don't know who I am. And everybody thinks that I can only be this person that I played at 7 years old. And then to have that coupled with this constant scrutiny, like there's a blog that, you know, ranks the hottest party girls and she's like moving up and down on the list. And those things really existed at that time. And so it just seemed like, unfortunately for poor Michaela, it seemed like the perfect time to set the novel. And also because she's 27 in 2007, that meant that she was a child star in the 80s and 90s. And so she was on the sitcom that everybody watched. So it wasn't like today where, you know, some people are watching like the kids are watching something on their iPad on YouTube and the parents are watching something on HBO Max. Like everyone in the family at 8:00 on Friday nights was watching Full House or whatever show you want to fill in. And so regardless of age or circumstance or where you lived, everybody was seeing Michaela as Daisy. And so what does that do to a person? So those two things together, like 2007 was the only time I could have said this book.
We might be going back there because now apparently Netflix owns everything. So
right, exactly. So here we go. Next thing we know, we're going to be mailing DVDs back.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, my husband and I are rewatching all the old Cheers and Frasier and Friends, and we're like, you remember when everybody just watched the same few things, and the next day we all talked about it.
We all talked about it. It was this like communal experience where we all could talk about. And if you missed it, and you had to record it and set a timer on your VCR, and like you had to like shut your ears so that you know you can hear people talking about what happened last night. Yeah, it was just a very, like, I do miss those days in that regard. Like, I mean, I don't miss the celebrity toxicity, but I miss that sort of like communal experience we all had of like, did you see what happened on this show last night?
Yeah, I do too, for sure. I was lucky enough to meet you years ago through an organization called the Tall Poppy Writers, of which you are COO, Chief Operating Officer. So can you tell us a little bit about the Tall Poppies and how you got involved?
Yes. So the Tall Poppies, as you know, as one of our amazing poppies, is a group of women authors who are across genres, across publishers, and we have, you know, historical fiction, thrillers, romance, book club, all genres. And we are just a group of women authors who support each other and lift each other up. It's so hard in this industry for readers to find their next favorite book and for authors to help people discover their book. And so our dear friend Anne Garvin founded the Tall Poppies years ago. And it was her mission to lift writers up, lift each other up rather than cutting each other down in competition of like, read my book and not read her book. It's read my friend's book because it's really great. And this is what she writes and you should read it. And so I have been a fan of the Tall Poppies for years and years and years. I was a blogger starting in 2014. The Poppies started in 2012. And so shortly after the Poppies came about, I was blogging and I would blog about all of these authors that I loved. And I discovered that many of them were from this group called the Tall Poppy Writers. And then I looked them up and I discovered new authors because they were part of this group, which is exactly the mission of what the Tall Poppies want. And it was, I just started discovering new authors, and I was blogging about the Tall Poppies and all of their books, and just became a Tall Poppy blogger. So I officially would blog about their books. And then a few years in, Anne messaged me and asked if I wanted to run their social media because we had gotten to know each other through my support of the Poppies, and she loved my dog and I loved her dog, and that's how the internet works. And so she had messaged me and asked, do you want to do our social media for us? She looked me up on LinkedIn. She saw that I had a marketing background, and I said yes. And so I started doing the social media, and then over the years, my role expanded and grew, and I, took on more of the day-to-day, and now I'm the COO. But the Poppies are so, so special to me. I just think it's such a unique, positive place in the world, and we just support each other. We love our readers. We love other writers. Even if you're not a Tall Poppy, we just want everybody to succeed. And so it's just been such an honor to be a part of that group. As I was discovering the Poppies, I was like, imagine if I was a Poppy one day, and now I'm leading the charge. Like, it's just amazing to me.
Now you have your own book out.
Yeah, I have my own book out, and I've done it all these years for no other reason than that I just genuinely love to do it. I genuinely want to help. As I said in my bio, I want to help readers find their next favorite book. And that's why I was a blogger. That's why I used to do Bookstagram. And that's why I became involved in the Poppies. And the fact that now I do have my own book out and I have this amazing group of women supporting me it means everything to me. So I love our Poppy sisters so, so much.
Yeah, you and Anne have both done so much just to sort of change the conversation, in my opinion. I remember Anne saying something along the lines of, why can't we just help each other? All writers, why can't we just lift each other up? It's not a competition. When they finish your book, they'll read someone else's book, and then they'll read someone else. There's lots and lots of reading time. So
exactly. Readers read widely, and you never, like you said, you're gonna need the next book. So support each other, lift each other up. We're all in this together, and so I love us. I love who we are.
Great. You had a great event last night that I was fortunate enough to attend at Book Love in Plymouth. What a beautiful place. If you live in the area, definitely check out Book Love in Plymouth, Massachusetts. That was so exciting. I know you had a few other events earlier in the week. Do you have any more things coming up that we should know about?
So as you mentioned, I just finished a string of events. So it was sort of like I did things in reverse. My book launch was the last scheduled event in December, and I did a string of events leading up to it, which was really, really exciting. It was sort of like, I was my own opening act. But now as we lead into the holidays, I don't have any more in-person events scheduled for the rest of this year, but I am already working on events for 2026. So I have a virtual event in January that's going to be going up on my website. I'm doing a writing retreat with Robin Call and Lisa Tenner in January as well. And I've started talking with Robin about, I love her. I love her so much. And I've started doing some, outreach to bookstores and figuring out dates there. So if you sign up for my newsletter, StephanieBurnsAuthor.com, you'll be the first to know when those dates have been finalized. But I'm really excited about continuing to get out there and meet readers and talking about this book.
And I bet you'd be happy to do book clubs too if you got any invites.
I'm so happy to be doing book clubs. I would be thrilled. I love book clubs. So yes.
I hear from Mark Cecil, our fabulous producer, that we have a few viewer questions. So let's take a few of those. Laurie asks, what kind of research did you do for this book?
Oh, that's such a good question.
What didn't you do for this book?
I know. I love that question. I think I did a mix of actual research and just like the way that my brain has always absorbed this pop culture world. And so living through the 2000s as someone who was of the age of the people that they were talking about, like Lindsay Lohan and the Olsen twins and Britney Spears and Paris Hilton, I think that absolutely influenced the book in sort of like research in real time and thinking like, these girls are my age and look what they're going through. And so all of that, I guess you could actually call research because I lived it. But as I was writing the book, I did do a lot of actual research. So I read, as I mentioned, I always loved reading biographies of of celebrities in general, not necessarily former child stars, but I did read them on former child stars. And I continued to do so as I was writing the book, and I reread the ones that I had read previously on, like I said, people like Natalie Wood and Elizabeth Taylor. I watched documentaries like the Brooke Shields documentary. And a lot of those things, unfortunate because they came out after I had already written and revised the book. And so the book had already taken shape. Michaela was already her own person. Her story was already her own story. But there were things that I could glean from those documentaries and books that either validated, like, oh, yes, I got that right, or, oh, that's a really good thing I hadn't thought about. How would that impact someone like Michaela? And so and then I also just did fun research of like listening to my favorite music of that time and watching my favorite shows of that time and looking back at the fashion of that time. And
it's tough work, but somebody has to do it, Steph.
Really tough. Like I hated listening to the NSYNC No Strings Attached CD, but I had to do it. And I did have, as I said, that picture of Brittany, Lindsay, and Paris. I actually had that pinned up on my bulletin board as I was revising the book, because just that image of the three of them and like what that was like and what that must have been like for them. Really kind of like if I was feeling like stuck in my writing, I would look at that picture and think about those girls, and they inspired me.
That sounds like fun research to me. Was this always the title? Oh, I love title questions.
Yes, it was not always the title. I love that question too. So as I was writing the book, I called it Losing Daisy because, yes, far from the A-list. I called it Losing Daisy because it was, her character was Daisy and she was trying to lose the image of Daisy. And so that was the title I threw on it. I never really liked that title. I felt like it sounded like she was looking for her lost dog. But that's what I called it for years and years. Exactly. Where's Daisy? Missing. But for years, that was what I called it, like in my brain, and I called it LD for short. And then I was looking at my computer earlier trying to clear some storage, and I was like, LD version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But when I went on to actually try querying it, I was like, okay, that's not going to be the title. And so I called it Where Everybody Knows Your Name, because first of all, the TV reference was a play on words. And for Michaela, everybody knows her name essentially because of the person that she was on TV. And she goes to all of these clubs and she gets right in because everybody knows her name, but nobody really knows who she is. And often the name that they're thinking is Daisy and not Michaela. But that ultimately didn't work for the title because it was a little too cheersy. And then came up with a list of titles, and I came up with Far From the A-List because it's a phrase that's right in the first chapter. And so I gave my publisher a big list of titles that I thought of, and that was the winner, which in retrospect, I'm really excited about because I love it. To put it bluntly.
They chose it in the end, but from a list that you gave.
From a list that I created, correct. Yeah.
That's a good compromise.
Yeah.
How do you pick character names?
Ooh, I was actually just talking about this with a friend who was asking, did you always call Michaela Michaela? And I did. And I actually, for every character in this book, the title changed, but the characters' names never changed. So from the day that I created them, it was always Michaela Turner, Josh McKenzie, Ben English, like all of those characters were the names that they were. And when I'm creating a character, I think about them so much before I even start writing a book. So, I mean, this is my debut novel, but I've written other things. And, I always, before I start writing, I think about every character in excruciating detail. So I think about their physicality and their childhood and the worst thing that happened to them and the best thing that happened to them. And what do they want concretely and what do they want abstractly? And I go through these character sketches essentially of every person in the book. So Michaela, as well as all of her friends and family. And I think as I built them out, their names just sort of came to me, which I know sounds a little like kooky, but they did. I don't know. They just sort of came to me like, that's who she is. She's a Michaela Turner.
Yeah. And sometimes you try on names and you're like, no, that doesn't fit that person in my brain.
Actually, I will say just a little tidbit for you and me and for our listeners here. Her doorman, his name is Phil the doorman. And at one point, I was writing a very early draft. At some point, like I called him Carl, and I don't know why. And so then I was like, that's actually something Michaela would do. So I mentioned in the book that maybe Phil doesn't like her because for a while she thought his name was Carl. An Easter egg for myself.
I snuck that right in there. Well, if there's time, Robin asks, please ask Stephanie what her favorite treasure is on the shelves behind her.
Oh, I love that question.
That's a lot of shelves.
I do have a lot of shelves. So I have this little stuffed version of my dog, my dog is actually sleeping behind me. You can't see him, but I have this little stuffed Ollie that I got in Office Secret Santa years ago.
Oh my God.
It's so great.
Look at his teeth.
I know, his little teeth.
Oh, it's front and back.
It's front and back. It's a nice little Ollie pillow. And so when I got this at the time, Ollie was still, now he's 8, but he was probably like 3 at the time. And he liked to still chew things and get into things. And I was like, I need to put this somewhere where he's not going to destroy it. So I've always put it on a shelf because I started it that way. And then I just really like seeing him over my shoulder. So that's my biggest treasure. I also have so many books that I just love so much that I could never pick a favorite. But so I'll say this is my favorite, the most special thing.
I think that's a good one. Are you an alphabetical bookshelf person or a color?
I am kind of an alphabetical bookshelf person. So this is like my favorite bookshelf. And then I have like a signed book like this. I don't even know what my categories are. So I have like signed books behind me. I have like to be read books over here. I have other books over here. They're all kind of messy. I try to be alphabetical, but my system up here, like I want the author to be in one square if it fits in one square. So if I have like an orphan on the next thing, I will put it on the other side. I don't know. I'm weird.
Okay, and now for the most important question. When everyone finishes Far from the A-List, can they expect more Stephanie Burns books in the future? Is there anything you can share at the moment?
I hope so. I don't have anything to share at the moment, but I do have another book in the works that I'm very, very excited about. And it deals with a lot of the same themes of, identity and how the world sees us versus how we see ourselves, but with very different characters, a very different story, very different protagonist. But it is something that I really, really am enjoying, and I hope to be able to share more about it soon.
Oh, good. Well, we'll look forward to that. Thank you so much for coming on today, Steph. Congratulations, heartfelt congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Far from the A-List. Check it out. If you don't have it already, buy it for someone for holiday gifts. Makes a great gift, especially if you like pink.
Yes.
Lots of pink here. Thanks for coming on, and thank you everyone for joining us. And we will see you next time on A Mighty Blaze.
Thank you.